Welcome to the Talking Toughness series of podcasts, where we examine the mental toughness concept with guests from a wide range of sectors, illustrating that our mental approach to what happens to us and around us matters for all of us. Our guests come from the worlds of business and public service, education, social mobility, sport, and health. They all share their experiences and their observations about the factors that have enabled them to survive and to thrive on their journey through life. Many guests have gone further and incorporated the concept into what they do as coaches, trainers, managers, and leaders, helping others to thrive in their turn. Their experiences are valuable to those of us who strive to do the same. In this podcast, which is in two parts, we welcome a very special guest in Jo Owen, someone who we have got to know very well through a shared interest in leadership, resilience, and positivity. Now, the term guru can be overused much of the time, but in Jo Owen, we have the real thing. Jo Owen has become something of a leadership and motivation guru, which is reflected in a number of best-selling books on these and other related themes. He's also something of a social entrepreneur in the world of education, having founded 8 major organisations which all make an impact. And these range from Teach First in the UK to Stir Education, which operates globally. What this means is that he has a lifetime of knowledge, experience, and skills, which he is happy to share with us. In the first episode, Jo Owen defines leadership, as in his style, in a very straightforward use of language, including exploring the critical role of trust. Importantly, he sees leaders as people who make their own success, and he makes a very valid point that's often missed, that leadership is a full-time job. In the second episode, Jo explores what that overused term authenticity can mean in the context of leadership, making the point that you can't succeed at leadership by being someone else. The key is to be the best version of who you are. He explores how leadership can be learned and how important it is to be realistic and grounded. There's little value in seeking perfection, but all leaders have to be prepared to ask themselves the question, where do I really add value where I am? And to know the answer to that. And finally, Jo introduces RAMP, an acronym for an approach he has developed which builds intrinsic motivation, which really does work. Okay, Jo, right. We've had many conversations over the recent past and touched on a lot of subjects. One of the things that interests me in particular is you are the founder of an organisation that is now called Ambition. It was originally called Teaching Leaders, and that's very much about leadership in the world of education. What motivated you to do that?
Well, a lot of things that happen a lot of the good things that happen in life are accidental, and they're about luck. But of course, you create your own luck as well. So, this is a classic example where you need luck to succeed, but you create your own luck. So Teaching Leaders came about sort of by accident. I'm a co-founder of Teach First, which in itself was a little bit of an accident, but that's another matter. And Teach First is now the largest graduate recruiter in the UK, and it's celebrated its 20th anniversary last week. So that's absolutely brilliant. And the idea of Teach First was to get great graduates into the most challenging schools where they're needed the most, because that's how you could improve education. Great. And then we realized that actually the great teachers could only succeed if they worked for great head teachers. You needed great head teachers. So we set up another charity called Future Leaders, which was there to try and develop the great head teachers of the future. Okay. A couple of years after that, we realized that actually the great head teachers couldn't succeed unless they had great middle leaders, which is what Teaching Leaders was all about, creating the great middle leaders for those schools. So that's kind of very, very slow way of figuring out that actually you need great leadership at every level. Yeah, if the frontline people don't have great leadership, they really struggle. The person at the top really struggles because they can't do it themselves. Leadership is a team sport now, and it's not just a top team. You need a team at every level, and the level that is, to me, the most interesting is that middle level, which is what teaching leaders is all about, because that's the bit that everyone ignores. People are really excited about the bright young things, the graduates. Okay, we've got to really do something about that, invest in them. That's good, that's fine. And people get very excited about the top leaders. Oh, they're very grand and important, prestigious. I must sort of get some of their pixie dust. But there's all this bit in the middle, which is actually the toughest and hardest bit. Oh, here's why it's so hard. Because if you think about a trade-off between ambiguity and control, at the bottom of the organization, you don't have much control. You're kind of told what to do, but that equally means you don't have much ambiguity. So life may be hard, but at least it's fairly clear. At the top, that's where you get the greatest control you're ever going to get. And incidentally, it's not complete control, because formal control never is enough. But you've got maximum control, but you've also got maximum ambiguity, because not only do you not know the answer, no one's even going to tell you what the exam question is. You've got to figure out what that is for yourself. So you've got this sort of ambiguity, control sort of progression. In the middle, you'd hope it's the best of both worlds. It isn't. It's the worst of both worlds. You don't have the control. In fact, you've instead of having one boss at the bottom of the organization, you're probably working for at least two bosses, and you're competing with three others. And that also generates maximum ambiguity about really what should I do and how should I do it. So life in the middle, managing in the middle, leading in the middle, is probably the hardest thing that anyone can do. That's where you really earn your stripes, which is why I find it the most interesting. And of course, that's one of the reasons we got so excited about setting up Teaching Leaders. Everybody else was completely ignoring that middle layer, but they're the engine room of success. Sorry, it's very dangerous. You ask me a question, it's like hitting the green button, and I'm off. I just get excited about all these things, So,
well, that's what we want, Jo. And I'm familiar with the backstory to Teaching Leaders, and in the early days we were actually involved with Teaching Leaders.
Absolutely.
So,
and you were involved actually in a very critical way, which was about the whole mental toughness and associated resilience and all that. And boy, you really need it in the middle. Yeah. Because where you're facing maximum ambiguity and minimum control, that is a recipe for stress. Okay. Yeah. So at the bottom of the organization, you've got pressure, but the fact you don't have ambiguity means that you've got clarity, you know what to do, and you haven't got stress. But when you have pressure and you now add to that ambiguity and you're no longer in control of your destiny, you depend on other people for your success, ping, that pressure becomes stress big time. So the obvious answer actually, and here's the danger about resilience and mental toughness and all that kind of good stuff, which I love, but you can hear the but coming. What I see is too many firms sort of put people through this sheep dip training of resilience or mental toughness or whatever it is. And now we'll put you through the sheep dip. You're mentally tough, so we can now really abuse you and create maximum ambiguity and stress and everything else because you're able to cope with it. So it doesn't matter how rubbish the management is, you're just going to live with it. It's like, no, that's not the answer. Yeah, the answer is to have good management that doesn't create stress, doesn't create ambiguity, and actually empowers people properly, so that people aren't having to bring limitless reserves of resilience and mental toughness to the table. It's good if they do that for all sorts of other reasons, but they shouldn't have to bring it, right? So I think the resilience and mental toughness, if you interpret it right, in my mind, it's about sort of learning to dance in the sun, because you're not going to be able to dance in the rain unless you learn to dance in the sun as well. And everyone thinks it's about learning to dance in the rain. It's like, the rain comes along, but you're not going to dance in the rain unless you know how to dance in the sun as well. So it's like you've got to build those strengths in the good times to prepare for those tough times, but you don't make the tough times routine. They should be exceptional. Sorry.
I think that's a great way of putting it, Joe. I'd always view mental toughness as essentially like a collection of resources that you have. And look, if you're in the rain and you're in the tough times, then you might get through it if you're mentally tough, but it'll use up that resource. So you can't direct that resource towards others or achieving other things, And
you're not going to suddenly acquire that resource in the middle of a rainstorm. You need to be able to draw on those skills and those experiences from other times.
Yeah, and it's funny. So a head teacher of a school last year said to me at one point, knew that it did stuff in mental toughness, and said, "Oh, would you be able to do something in our school? Because the staff find it really stressful." And I said, "Okay, before we talk about that, is there any way you could make it less stressful?" Rather than, are there any other sort of systemic issues that make it really stressful in the first place to address?
So I think that's perfect. The way I think about it is sort of 3 lines of defense on this. We can call it mental toughness, well-being, resilience. And I apologize for the loose language, but 3 lines of defense on this. The first line of defense is the one you're referring to, which is to create the right environment in which you don't need to draw on those personal strengths, because actually you've created an environment in which people will flourish anyway. And actually you can do that, right? That's the good news. You can do that at a system level. So that's the first line of defense. Clearly, the second line of defense then is your personal resources, which is equipping people with perspectives, experience, skills to be able to deal with the rain showers and the storms and all that of life and all that sort of stuff, because they will happen. And then the third line of defense is clearly professional help, because there are just times where things go so horrendously wrong that expecting people to cope just by themselves, that they need some proper support there. So there is a limit to what you can do in terms of equipping people with the right skills and experience. But you can create the environment in which you minimize. The first line of defense is create the environment in which you minimize the need for those skills.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose one question before we move on, that I was interested in picking up from your opening there, Joe, was talking about great leaders at the top and great leaders in the middle and those kind of things. So I have a couple of questions, but I'll ask them together. I suppose what kind of skills is it that makes someone a great leader, particularly that middle one, and how do those leaders come about? Are they necessarily assigned roles, or are they kind of more just that emergent kind of leader? Do you need to be appointed to a leadership role to be a leader?
So there's so much in there. Right, stand by. Have you got an hour or two? Okay, so let me answer, I think, a question which is underlying the questions, which is what on earth is leadership? Okay, because lots of people talk about it. And then if you say to them, so what is a leader? Right? They suddenly go, oh, well, blah, 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 and it's all blah, 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 like that. and very few of them come up with a plausible definition. And if you don't know what a leader is, then literally you don't know what you're talking about. So the first thing you've got to do is try to define what is a leader. And the only good definition I have come across comes from Henry Kissinger, who just has had his 100th birthday. You may love him, you may loathe him, but he has achieved a remarkable career in his time, one way or the other. His definition of leadership, and he probably stole it from somebody else, I don't know. His definition of leadership is this: leaders take people where they would not have got by themselves. Sounds incredibly boring. So before you fall asleep, right, this is Kissinger, so it's devious and it's actually revolutionary. Leaders take people where they would not have got by themselves. What that means is that leadership has nothing to do with your title. Nothing. So you can have a very grand title like CEO or president or prime minister, but actually if a lot of them are just following the herd, following popular opinion, basically following a legacy that they inherited. They're not leading. They think they're leading, but they're not. Equally, I recently met a porter in a hospital, kind of lowest of the low, if you will. I was talking to him. He said, "Yeah, well, it was all complete bloody mess here because the way the wheelchairs were arranged, the wheelchairs were always in the wrong place, and we weren't allowed to do anything about it, and it would just cause chaos because patients couldn't get moved around, and nurse got irritated. So I just said, well, stuff this. We are just going to change the system. So I just got the porters together, and we all agreed, what needed to be happening, where the wheelchairs needed to be, and when, and how we'd manage it, and we just did it." And the managers were really upset, but actually then they realized it was brilliant and it's all working. Okay, guess what? Porter by name, lowest of the low by name, leader by nature, right? So, you can lead wherever you are, whatever you are doing. Now, there's a second bit to your question, which is, well, what about leadership at different levels? So, and I think this has to do more with hierarchy than leadership, that bit of the question. Because if you say that actually leadership is about what you do, it's not about your title, then you can't talk about leadership at different levels. You can talk about what are the skills you need at different levels of the organization. Okay. So fortunately, I've done a lot of research on this. And the way I've done it is to ask people, what do you expect of your boss? Very interesting, right? And what do you expect of the people that report to you? And what comes out is that the rules of survival and success change dramatically at each level. So at the most junior level, the new graduate, the recent graduate, the things that come out are things like proactivity, hard work, being positive, that kind of good stuff. It's basically all attitudinal stuff. You go, is that all you're expecting? The answer is yes. Oh, because then I ask the question, well, how satisfied are you with your team on these characteristics? Okay. And you look at that, hard work, proactivity, you go, well, those are really low. Isn't everyone like that? I mean, surely, but actually the satisfaction levels are around 50%. Okay. So at a junior level, simply by showing the right attitude, you're going to stand out amongst everyone else, and probably your first promotion will come as a result. Okay, so that's good. Now let's go in the middle. It gets really messy, so I'm going to skip that for a moment because it's totally different in the middle. At the top, it's very distinctive. Okay, so 5 things. I'm going to have to try and remember them. I don't have the research in front of me. Vision, number 1. Which is that whole thing about, I've got an idea about where I'm going to take people that is different, right? I'm going to take people to a different place. And we can talk more about what that is. It's about storytelling, all sorts of good things, finding the urgent need, etc. And in a sense, the bigger and the bolder, the better it is, the more excited people get about it. So if people push back against your vision, that's good. It shows that they're engaging. If people just yawn at your vision, it's like, so what? Okay, so indifference is bad, hatred is good on this. It's like, embrace it. That's first. Ability to motivate others, which is interesting. The good news there is about 65% of bosses think they're good at it, although 35% have enough insight to say they're not good at it. 32% of their followers think that their bosses are any good at it. So there's a big motivation challenge in there. Decisiveness, which bizarrely comes straight from the vision. Because if you've got a really clear idea of this is the mountain we've got to climb, not that mountain over there, we're not going fishing over there, we're not going for a picnic, we're climbing that mountain, okay? Then when it is one of those difficult decisions come along about, well, should we invest our time here or there? It's like, hello, it's really easy. It's all about, we've got to climb that mountain. So that's where we're going to go. Where if you don't have a clear vision, then it's like, well, we could do this or I could do that. You get confused. And followers hate, we talked about ambiguity earlier and how horrible that is. Followers hate ambiguity. It causes stress, excess work, etc. So decisiveness, followers really, really appreciate. Fourth one, being good in a crisis, right? That's the acid test. That's the teabag theory of leadership. Yeah, you only know how good a leader is when they land in hot water, just like tea bags, okay? So embrace those crises. Those are the moments of truth when followers step back, leaders step up. Followers are smart, right? Because that's your survival strategy. You see which way the wind is blowing, and if somebody messes up, it doesn't matter, it's not your fault, and you join the bandwagon. Okay, that's great. Leaders step up. They take control. They say, actually, this, I know what to do. We're going to do it, and bang, all right? So they accelerate their career. They succeed fast or they fail fast, basically. But even if they fail fast, they just try again. So actually, they just plan on accelerating. So that's the fourth one. The fifth one is honesty, which was really surprising. And actually, this was the Marmite one. Anyone who scored well on honesty had a chance of scoring well on everything else. Any leader who was rated low on honesty got hammered on every other criteria. Okay, and I was looking at this really hard, talking to people about it, and I found out that actually honesty isn't about honesty. It's not politicians' honesty in that I'm an honest person until I've been found guilty in a court of law and all my appeals have failed, right? That's weak form honesty. This is strong form honesty, which is about trust. And it comes down to, do I trust my boss or not? And we've all been in that situation where we've had to work for a boss or a colleague we don't trust. And it's a really unpleasant experience. And we tend to rate that person kind of low on everything, right? But if the trust is there, then at least you've got a chance of being rated well on everything else. So you've got 5 very clear and distinctive things that you need as a leader at the top. These criteria are really good predictors. And actually the good news is that once you know them, you can really work on each one. It's not like this is in your DNA or not. You can work on each of them. Some of them more difficult than others, but yeah, they're there. Sorry. I can't now remember what your questions were. I really enjoyed speaking. Anyway,
no, that's great. It definitely. I think I was really interested in was kind of like that. I suppose that makeup of what makes a good leader, and I suppose what I'm hearing you say is that it's not necessarily. You mentioned the skills that a leader might have in terms of decisiveness and things like that. But I think the trust one's so interesting because it's not just it's a great distinction between trust and honesty, because I suppose honesty, you inherently will believe that you're honest or not, or somewhere along that scale. But whether people trust you is not necessarily reflective of that. That's a perception that people have. And I suppose what I'm hearing you say then is to be a great leader it's not just having the skills, but it's being able to, I suppose, influence that perception that other people have in your trustworthiness.
So trust is one of those small words with a big meaning, and like, what is it and what do you do about it? So the good news is I reduce everything to its sort of component parts if I possibly can. And I discovered the trust equation. Right? So you can now identify...
Pen and paper at the ready, Joe.
Exactly. So you can now identify the components of trust, and you can work on each element. Here we are. Trust is a combination of personal alignment, social alignment, like, do I like you as an individual? It's a lot easier to trust people who are like ourselves, which is true. But when you think about that in terms of the equity, diversity, and inclusion agenda, there's a bit of a disaster. But anyway, so that's the first bit. Social alignment, goal alignment, because it's kind of really difficult to trust someone if they're working to a different agenda and they're competing with you, right? So why don't we trust second-hand car salesmen? Because we know they're not on our side. They've got a different agenda to us, all right? So you need the goal alignment. You need credibility. Right? You need credibility. Now, that's an interesting one, because you can have the goal alignment and personal alignment, but actually, if you're not credible, well, I'm not going to trust you. So as professionals, we all think we're credible, because credibility is about doing as you say. I mean, of course I do as I say. I mean, I always do as I say, right? The problem normally isn't in the doing, because professionals are quite sort of paranoid about the doing, actually, which is good. It's in the saying, because we all want to please people in the moment. So when someone comes with a request, it's very easy to say things like, well, I'll look into it, I'll do my best, I'll see what's possible, I'll have a go, okay? You know you're not saying you'll do it, you're giving yourself endless opt-outs, okay? But of course, that's not what's heard. What's heard is, I'll do it, right? So 2 weeks later, you come back and say, well, I looked into it, I did my best, I saw what was possible, but it's not going to work, right? Bang, all credibility gone. Okay. And then having the I said, you didn't, and anyway, you meant, and what you did, it's like, that just makes it worse. So if you want to maintain credibility, it's better to have a difficult conversation about expectations at the start than an impossible conversation about outcomes at the end. So we've got personal alignment, goal alignment, credibility, selflessness is the fourth really good bit. So broadly speaking, be a giver, not a taker. So many people are takers and we can spot them a mile off. Whereas people who are generous and give builds the personal alignment, but also builds a lot of trust as well. And it builds sort of social capital and social debt as well. And most people will want to reciprocate. Okay. And then the final bit is all of that. You sort of multiply all those factors together or add them together. I don't know the maths of it. Who cares? Whatever. But all of that is offset by risk. So the greater the risk, the more trust you need. So I might go into the street and ask a stranger for the way to the post office. I'm not going to go into the street and ask a stranger to look after my entire life savings, all 3 shillings and 6pence of it. Okay. That would be unwise. So risk is analog, not digital, which means that also trust is, well, oddly, trust is actually curiously both analog and digital. It's analog in the sense it takes a very long time to build up. Okay, you have to earn the trust. But once you break trust, bang, that's digital. It is like a broken vase. Yeah, you can sort of put the vase back together again with a lot of work. Yeah. But it's never really the same. So, once you've put in the effort to build the trust, you've got to keep on earning it, and you've got to keep it. Yeah. You keep on saying things, and then I can keep on wondering, have I actually answered the question or not? I don't know. You were
No,
talking about trust, weren't you?
I was. No, I definitely led you that way, and I think it's really interesting, and I'm so interested that, and I'll shut up soon and let someone else
I should
ask a
shut up
question,
soon.
no, you're the guest. You're okay to talk. We like that. So I was thinking there. I suppose, like many people listening, you're thinking, how credible am I? And one of the things that I think becomes quite challenging when you're, particularly if you're leader or middle leader, in terms of maintaining that credibility, is I think when I'm on top of things and I'm not overwhelmed with loads of things to do and stressed out, I'd like to think I'd be pretty good at that. But I don't know how good I am when things get really stressful, when things get really hard, when crises happen.
This is okay. So you've hit on really important stuff. So leaders aren't judged by what they're like in Easy Street.
Yeah.
Okay. It's the teabag theory of leadership. You're going to be judged by what happens when you're in hot water, when the chip's down, all that sort of stuff. Okay. And oddly, you're not going to be remembered for what you achieve or what you do, unless you do something really remarkable, like, I don't know, be the first person to land on the moon or something like that. Then you'll be remembered for that. But I'm sorry, that's already happened. Okay, so you're not going to have that one. I mean, as a little test, what I sometimes do with groups is ask them to try and map out as many of the prime ministers since the last World War and what they're remembered for. And these are all people who think they've fought terribly important battles to change the country and all that. Actually, very few of them get remembered for anything that they achieved at all. They all get remembered for really stupid stuff. And again, if you now think about some of your colleagues, some of your bosses from the past, some of your teachers from the past, can you remember exactly what they did or what they achieved? Can you remember if that boss managed to beat budget by 6.7% in 2019 or whatever? I mean, no.
I'd say I remember my personal interactions with them.
Yeah.
You remember exactly. And so if I asked you, remember what they achieved, you will struggle. If I ask you, can you describe what they were like? You can probably tell me, we could spend all day listening to what your bosses and colleagues were like. We have so much to say. So now, how are you going to be remembered? How are you going to be remembered? You may be evaluated on how your performance, and you probably will be, but how you'll be remembered is for how you are. And in particular, you're not going to be remembered for all those days in Easy Street. You're going to be remembered for how you behaved at those moments of truth when the chips were down, which is really worth remembering. And in practice, you've just got to remember at points like that, leadership is a performance. You have to wear the mask of leadership. And that mask is about being the leader you want to be. It's not about being somebody else, because you can't be somebody else. All right, that's just fakery, right? And it fails, and people see through it. It's about being the best of who you are and knowing who you're the best of are. So, most people within them, they want to be positive, optimistic, proactive, supportive, kind of all decisive, all those good things, right? But if that's what you want to be, and that's when you're in Easy Street, remember, in hot water, right, that's the mask you got to wear. Bang, do it. Okay. And that's when you're, and it's not just, the 115th night of the mousetrap or whatever it is. This is first night performance. Camera, lights, action, bang, you're all in. And actually think of it as a performance often helps. Because if you just go in like, it's another day, it's like, that's hard. But if you think of it as like, right, it's a performance. This is my mask. I'm going to wear it. Bang, off you go. And there are lots of techniques about then how do you maintain that mask at those terrible moments where everything's been going wrong, and then somebody or some people decide to wind you up, right? They just decide to have a go, and they know how to have a go. At which point you have every right to be angry, annoyed, and upset. Okay? But there's no law that says you have to be angry, annoyed, and upset. And actually being angry, annoyed, and upset doesn't help you. Is that the mask you want to wear? So in that moment of crisis, it's so easy to go, you just flip. The pressure cooker blows. So how do you actually maintain control? And I ask this of lots of leaders. And the answer that always comes back is it's about just buying 1, 2, 3 seconds of time where that moment of losing control, you stop and you just allow your brain to make a conscious decision about how you want to react. So I then say, well, all right, so how do you buy those 2, 3, 4 seconds? And the answers I come back, they're all lovely. I mean, some say, well, I just count to 3 like my granny told me to. I just breathe in once deeply and then breathe out. I become a fly on the wall. I observe the situation and I decide, what I wanted to do. I think, what would my role model want me to do in this situation? Incidentally, if your role model is some combination of Darth Vader and Genghis Khan, please don't use that particular methodology. That might not be good. But my all-time favorite of how they just retain that little bit of control in that moment was, he said, it's very easy. I just look at the other person. I just imagine them as this sort of fat 50-year-old in a pink tutu, and then I can't get angry. So it really doesn't matter what your technique is. It really doesn't. As long as you have some little tripwire in your head which goes, bing, I'm now going to do my little thing by 2, 3 seconds. And then after 3 or 4 seconds, you say, no, actually, I am going to display anger here because something is wrong and people need to know that it's not acceptable. That's okay. That's okay. But now you're going to do it in a controlled and purposeful way, as opposed to just, I'm emotional and losing control. Okay, so I'm not saying you have to be nice all the time. I'm saying you just need to be able to make a conscious decision about how you want to behave and be seen in that moment.
It is perfect. That's a perfect description of the emotional control factor in the mental toughness concept.
Well, there you go.
It is.
All right, good.
You could have saved us a lot of work, Joe.
I'll take my commission later. It's all right.